Hello again. Welcome back to week 2 of year 5 of the Religious Education Initiative. Uh, for this day 2, for this selection from church tradition, we'll be looking at some of the hymns from the great feast of the church that we celebrate at the end of this week on September 14th, the elevation of the precious and holy cross. This feast day commemorates both the finding of the cross by St. Helen in the early 320s ish, I would say, and then its recovery and return to Jerusalem in 627 after its seizure by the Persians a decade before. So the Feast of the Holy Cross, September 14th, is a strict fast, and it functions almost like a mini celebration of the themes of Holy Week, all distilled into a single feast day here in the fall at the beginning of the new church year. So, from the Vespers, first of all, from the Kekregaria, the first set of hymns in the service, the second hymn of the Kekregaria. Moses once prefigured you when he extended his arms up, and he routed utterly Amalek, the tyrant king. O most precious cross, the believer's pride and joy, martyr athlete's support, the apostle's badge and ornament, defender of the just and the preservation of the devout. And all creation, seeing you lifted high, is therefore rejoicing now, and is celebrating and glorifying Christ, who has through you united those that were separate in his extreme benevolence. And then later on in the Vespers service, after the entrance, there's a procession to bless the 5 loaves, and during the procession, what we call the liti, there are a series of hymns, and this is the doxastikon of the liti. So, portraying in advance the action of the precious cross, Moses routed the adversary Amalek in the wilderness of Sinai, O Christ. For when he spread out his arms in the form of the cross, the people became strong. And now the outcome of these events has been fulfilled in us. Today the cross is exalted, and the demons are banished. Today the entire creation is liberated from corruption, for it is through the cross that all the gifts of grace have shined on us. Therefore, rejoicing, we all bow down before you and say, how magnified are your works, O Lord. Glory to you. And then, from the canon of the feast, from the first ode, we'll read several hymns. Moses prefigured the cross. Lifting up the rod, he stretched out his hand and split the sea for Israel to cross on land. Then he stretched it out again, and the sea returned and covered Pharaoh's chariots. The cross was thus portrayed as our invincible armor. So let us sing to the Lord, Christ our God, for he is greatly glorified. The next hymn. The prophet Moses of old in himself prefigured the undefiled passion, when he stood between those men of God. With hands held up in the form of the cross, he raised a monument of victory, defeating the destroyer Amalek and his forces. So let us sing to the Lord, Christ our God, for he is greatly glorified. And then the next hymn. The antidote was set up on a pole by Moses of old to save the people from the poisonous and deadly bite. He horizontally fixed to the wood, symbolic of the cross, the snake of bronze, and vanquished the affliction of the slithering serpent. So let us sing to the Lord Christ our God, for he is greatly glorified. And then the final hymn of Ode 1. The cross appeared in the sky to the godly-minded and pious emperor to be the emblem of victory. The raging of hostile foes now has been struck down by it, deceit has been overthrown, and faith in God has spread to the 4 corners of the earth. So let us sing to the Lord Christ our God, for he is greatly glorified. And then we'll do 2 hymns from the 9th ode of the canon. Theotokos, you are mystical paradise, for without husbandry you have blossomed Christ, by whom on earth the cross as a life-bearing tree has been planted and watered. As it is now exalted, we adore him and worship him and magnify you. And then the last hymn. Let all the trees of the forest greatly rejoice, because their nature was sanctified when Christ, by whom they were originally planted on earth, was crucified upon one. As it is now exalted, we adore him and worship him and magnify him. So, these reflections on the cross, I want to kind of, there are a lot of things. We've talked about Moses spreading his arms during the battle with Amalek. We've talked about Moses parting the Red Sea, or rather God parting the Red Sea when Moses strikes the water in the sign of the cross with his staff. We've talked about Moses setting up the bronze serpent on a cross as the antidote for the plague that came from the bite of the snakes that God sent among the people in their rebellion. And then we've talked about Constantine's vision of the cross. We've talked about the Mother of God as the mystical paradise, who is born the fruit of life, Jesus Christ, who planted the cross on the earth as a life-bearing tree, because he himself is the fruit of that tree. And then we talk about how all the trees of the world are sanctified in their nature. They rejoice because Christ has saved us through the cross. So, but the image of Moses spreading his hands during a battle, this is a vivid and important image, because Moses is the leader of the people. And when the people of Israel, still within, not even 50 days since the Exodus, since the Passover, they are arriving at Mount Sinai, and they are attacked. The nation of Amalek attacks the people of God at the very foot of the mountain of God. So this is perceived in Scripture as an assault on the throne of God itself by this evil nation and the demon gods that are driving them, and into whose power they've given themselves. So Amalek attacks. We would expect Moses, the mighty man, the strong leader, we would expect him to get on a horse and draw his sword and lead the people in battle. But he doesn't. He stands up on the rock, and he doesn't cheer them on. He doesn't, give directions and tactics. He raises his hands in a form of prayer, in a form of supplication, in a posture of trust in God, and also in the posture of the Lord upon the cross. In humility, in trusting their fate, their fortunes to the Lord, when Moses raises his hands, then Israel is victorious. When he lowers his hands, and we might imagine when he starts trying to make a battle plan, then Israel loses. This is a vivid image of the way in which God delivers his people, when they trust him and not to their own strength or their own reason or their own brilliance. Then they are granted victory, not as something that they have won with their own strength or prudence or numbers, but as a gift of God who protects them and fights for them. This is what the Lord does in the cross. In humility, in suffering, in obedience, he overthrows our greatest enemies. He overthrows death, he overthrows the devil, he overthrows sin, he overthrows the demons in his death, in his humility, and in his obedience. And we glorify his cross, we venerate his cross, and we take upon ourselves the cross, entrusting our lives and one another and our whole life to Christ our God. This is the Christian way. This is what we are celebrating on the day of the feast day of the cross. This is also why it's a fast day, because we lay aside the rich things that give us strength and we trust God. So that about the cross. God bless you all. We'll see you shortly for day 3.